Please be patient with us. So I'd like to introduce today's presenter, which is Detective Trooper Ronnie Evans. He has served as a detective for 4 years in the investigator and community service of the Michigan State Police. He is married with one daughter and another one that is due in January. So exciting. Ronnie also enjoys working at the Lansing Post because it gives him an opportunity to work in and around the community that he grew up in. So please, let's welcome Trooper Ronnie Evans and thank him for his attendance today. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you, Lisa and Cara, for the introduction. And we're going to go ahead and get right into the slideshow. If I could go ahead and share the screen here. All right. So again, the presentation today is on emergency preparedness. We're going to focus on preparing for natural disasters and matters surrounding current events with COVID-19. We'll also cover a live look at the basic emergency preparedness kit prepared by the Michigan State Police Emergency Management and Homeland Security Division. And I'm hoping at the end of this, everybody will have kind of an idea of how to develop and implement an emergency preparedness plan and kit for others, as well as your own household. So starting, preparation begins with you. And this is kind of a statement from emergency management with the state police. Emergencies can happen at any time. Being prepared saves lives. Local officials and relief workers will only be on scene after a disaster, but they cannot reach everyone right away. So the best way to make you and your family safer is to be prepared for an emergency when it occurs. We're going to talk about disasters and emergencies, and those can include weather emergencies, technological hazards, pandemic, and civil unrest can occur at any time with little or no warning. We're going to identify threats, risks, and vulnerabilities. So a major step in emergency preparedness is to identify these types of events that have or can occur based on any kind of history or previous events. So just looking at 2020, March of 2020, we had COVID-19. Michigan's first presumptive positive case was in 2020. Also in May of 2020, we had 500-year flood, which occurred. We've also had civil unrest occur in many major cities in the state of Michigan. And we're going to go ahead and look at winter of 2020. And from what I'm hearing, it's supposed to be below normal temperatures and a high possibility of a lot of ice, wind, and snow. So to kind of look at some definitions here, a threat is defined as any indication of possible harm or danger. A risk is the potential for an unwanted outcome resulting from an incident, event, or occurrence. And a vulnerability is a weakness in the design, implementation, or operation of an asset, system, or network, which can be exploited by an adversary or disrupted by natural hazard, technological failure, or pandemic. So looking at possible threats in the state of Michigan, we're going to look at weather threats, thunderstorms, flooding, excessive heat or bitter cold, and extended power outages. Michigan is extremely vulnerable to the potential of severe weather and atmospheric changes during all seasons. So again, tornadoes, thunderstorms, ice and hailstorms, blizzards, extreme heat and humidity, flooding and fog. These are all potential natural disasters that can occur and do occur in the state of Michigan. Recently, civil unrest is something that's come back under the radar of emergency preparedness for pretty much everybody. And safety of person and or property and availability of resources are some of the things that we're going to have to think of when we look at these kind of threats. So going back into history, 1967, Detroit riots, as well as 2020 with protests downtown that began in late May. Benton Harbor, Michigan has an example of some civil disturbances. And Lansing, Michigan this year, peaceful protests in downtown began the morning of May 31st, 2020, and the incident turned to civil unrest after some vehicles were damaged. Other possible threat that we're currently dealing with is pandemic. And parts of those threats are restrictions or executive orders, food and water shortages, and availability of necessities, toilet paper, for example. And currently, this is something we're most likely going to continue dealing with probably through the winter. So potential for an unwanted outcome resulting from an incident, event, or occurrence is what we're going to call a risk. And every action has an equal and opposite reaction can be applied to preparedness and the potential risk of not being prepared. Consequences can be a loss of comfort, control of your environment, and changes to your physical and mental health due to these risks. And these are kind of points that you can drive home to any of the families that you may be speaking with on emergency preparedness. Lack of cold weather preparedness means a loss of comfort for the family, a risk of cold weather injury, and the possibility of having to leave the home and attempt to find a warming center. Many were unfortunately hit hard by a lack of general preparedness that could have helped ease inconveniences felt at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. For myself, I know my wife and I had trouble finding canned goods at times, ground beef, cleaning supplies. These are all things you can discuss, and I'm sure you can think of your own inconveniences you've went through during this COVID-19 mess. And these are things that you can kind of use a personal touch to drive home with the family or whatever audience you're talking to about emergency preparedness. A vulnerability is a weakness in the design, implementation, or operation of an asset, system, or network. So again, more recently, COVID-19 brought into light many vulnerabilities in the operation of many assets and necessities having an effect on our day-to-day lives. So for example, stores limiting number of goods purchased. I know Sam's Club, Meijer, and other maybe smaller stores were limiting maybe one item per person to people because of availability of goods. Another thing you also need to think about is if you have individuals with ailments in the home, you need to think about having extra medicine on hand. And is a pharmacy even going to be able to be open in order to be able to get that? And talking with your doctor, your family doctor, or talking to families about speaking with their medical professionals and explaining those needs and possibly being able to be prescribed more medicine to have on hand is a good idea. I know I've had childhood asthma at times. I also have an allergy to peanuts, and we have other family members that have allergies. So we purchase extra EpiPens, and we have plenty of goods and medicines on hand. So there are 4 steps to preparedness. And this is again put on by MI Ready and Emergency Management here in the state of Michigan. But the 4 steps are: be informed, create an emergency plan, build a kit, and practice and maintain your plan and kit. And as far as kit maintenance, it's just as important as maintaining and practicing your plan. Items may expire or need to be replaced within a certain amount of time. And as we do our live look at the kit, I'll kind of dive more into that. So as far as being informed, and again, this is kind of tailored to our audience here, but these are things that you can go over with the families that you work with. So when I kind of talk about meet with household members, just kind of turn that into meet with the families that you're working with. But as far as meeting with household members, discuss the dangers of possible emergency events, including fire, severe weather, pandemic, etc. Learn if your community has a warning signal. What does it sound like? What should you do when you hear it? Find out how to help and access functional needs persons. So as far as functional needs persons, we're talking about people with physical, developmental, or intellectual disabilities, chronic conditions or injuries, older adults, children, low income, homeless, and or transportation disadvantaged people, or pregnant women. Okay. So also we want to learn about what hazards exist in your community, hazardous materials sites, railroads, etc. I know a couple years ago, Eaton County in Powderville, Michigan, I assisted on a train accident. An Amtrak vehicle hit a U-Haul moving vehicle that was on the railroad tracks, and part of that community lost power for some time. So just as an example, a personal example that I've dealt with, communities or people that are living near railroads really need to think about that possibility and whether they're going to have to leave or whether they're going to be out of power for some time. Also, many families have pets, so you need to ask them about animal care after a disaster. They need to realize that some animals may not be allowed inside of emergency shelters due to health regulations, and they need to come up with plans for those family pets on what they're going to do with them or where they may go within an emergency. And you also need to find out about the disaster plans in your workplace, your children's school or daycare center, and other places where your family spends time. Step number 2 is making a plan. All family members should know their address and phone number. Obviously, that's age appropriate. If you ask my soon-to-be 3-year-old, who her mom and dad are, she'll say our first and last name, and she can actually even talk about the city that we live in. But each family member really should try to learn that address and phone number as best as possible. You need to teach children how and when to call or text 911. A lot of people don't know that many dispatch centers are able to get text through 911, so that's the point you can also bring up. Each family member should know how to use a fire extinguisher. Again, this is age appropriate. Show each family member how and when to turn off water, gas, and electricity at the main switches. Again, age appropriate. The adults in the home should know how to do that. We'll also talk about tools they can use to do that and having that within their emergency preparedness kit. And again, plan how to take care of your pets during emergency. A lot of families have pets and they're family members, so you need to make sure you know how to take care of them. So we always plan and practice and train for events that have gratifying results, right? Sporting events, weddings, open houses, and graduation parties. You always think about planning for those type of events. We usually fail to practice and prepare for events that could have devastating or long-term results, like disasters, technological hazards, and again, pandemic. So step number 3, we're going to talk about building a kit. This emergency may require you to either evacuate, take shelter, or go without basic services for an extended period of time. Should an emergency occur, you will need a supply of essential items that last at least 3 days. Remember that, 3 days, okay? These items should be included in a readily accessible 72-hour emergency supply kit. You can store that in a 5-gallon bucket, a duffel bag, a backpack, really any available item that you can kind of store these items in a central location. I know I keep my emergency preparedness kit in the utility room in the basement of my house, okay? And for items to include in your kit, you can refer to MI Ready's Emergency Preparedness Kit checklist, which again, we'll go over here shortly. All right, and I believe there's going to be a poll here.
Yes, time for the poll. As noted, you'll have a few moments to complete it. Seems like everyone is 95%. Give it a couple of more minutes, because we have a great number of participants with us today. All righty. Only 87% have voted thus far. Just letting me remind you to take your chance. We're almost there. All right, 90% have voted. We'll stop it in just a second. And thank you for participating in the poll today. To share the results from today, or would you like me to do that at this point, Trooper Evans, to see how well everyone did?
If you'd like to, that's fine, or I can continue moving on. There you go.
Okay, there we go. All right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So moving on, again, these resources we'll kind of go over later in the presentation, but this is a example of a preparedness checklist from MI Ready, and this is available at michigan.gov/MI Ready. And these are fairly easy just to go ahead and print off and take a look at. There's also an auto emergency preparedness kit checklist. this is something good to talk to families about that do have automobiles, and it's something that going into winter is just kind of a good segue into emergency preparedness as a whole. So step number 4 in the 4 steps of preparedness is to practice and maintain your plan and kit. So things that you can talk to families about doing is quizzing your child or children every 6 months or so that remember their emergency preparedness plan and what to do when emergencies occur. You can conduct regular fire and emergency evacuation drills. For example, at my house, we talk about which door we're going to go out of, depending on where the possible fire or smoke is coming from. And our meet location is the direct center of the cul-de-sac across the street from our house. Taking a first aid and CPR class is always a good idea if it's available. If not, getting a first aid book or a small first aid kit that has medical and first aid reminders in it is always a great thing. Make sure you replace stored water and food every 6 months. Test and recharge your fire extinguishers according to the manufacturer's instructions. In my household, we've got a fire extinguisher in our utility room, got a fire extinguisher in the laundry room, which is right next to the kitchen, and I'd like to add one more to the garage. Also test your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors monthly, and change the batteries twice each year when you change your clocks in the spring and fall. To be honest, I don't always change them twice a year, but generally around the 4th of July, I don't know why. I normally change them during that season. You know, it's summertime, and I don't know. It's kind of a reminder to myself to change the fire or smoke detectors, excuse me. So not practicing or maintaining your plan will have ill effects on your preparedness. Will you see it coming? Can you respond? And will you make it through? Again, these are all reminders and things you can talk about with the families that you work with. So at this point, I am going to share a live feed of my screen, and I will go over the emergency preparedness kit that we have through MSP. So hello, everyone. Trooper Evans. So the first portion of our emergency preparedness kit that we received from emergency management is a laminated copy of our checklist. Okay. The nice thing about the checklist is it's got green checks on the items that you'd really like to have. Okay. And then on the back, the nice thing about it being laminated is you can take a dry erase marker and you can write on the back of it, write notes to yourself, and, you know, maybe mark things off as you go along. So that's really nice. The next thing we're going to talk about is storage. So we talked about backpacks, duffel bags, 5-gallon buckets. Well, we were all provided with a nice Tupperware bin to keep the entire emergency preparedness kit together. All right. So it's got a nice stackable top on it. Opens up. And it's got plenty of room for all the stuff that you're going to want to keep in your emergency kit. And in talking about these emergency kits, you know, if some of you are working with lower income families, something you can do possibly is to help provide some of the items for the kit, maybe some of the cheaper items or some of the more high dollar items, and looking at getting a grant or something like that. It's always possible to try to do that. Okay. So going off of our emergency preparedness kit here, I'm going to go over at least the green items that are checked off on this list. Okay. So we've got a battery powered radio and a weather radio. So not only do we have a hand crank one here, okay, we've also got a battery powered one as well. The nice thing about having a battery powered or a hand crank one is if power does happen to go out, you're still connected to receiving those weather alerts or emergency alerts or any kind of news updates, okay? Flashlights and extra batteries. Again, this is one that they provided to us in the kit. You can find most flashlights at a gas station or anywhere for probably $5 for a decent sized, just LED bulbs, okay? Make sure you have extra batteries for those. A first aid kit. I've got multiple first aid kits at my house. I've got one in my vehicle. When you're speaking with the families, you need to make sure they have a first aid kit that is large enough for the family. And better yet, if they have a family-sized first aid kit and maybe a couple smaller personalized first aid kits, that would be best, okay? But this first aid kit is just a very basic kit. Inside of the Ziploc baggie, I've added just a couple other items that were, laying around extra. Make sure at least once or twice a year you check the first aid kit to make sure things are not expired within the first aid kit. There's nothing worse than being in an emergency and needing something and finding it's expired, okay? And, just because, the gauze or the Band-Aids or maybe something else in the first aid kit is expired doesn't mean necessarily it won't work, but stuff like purified water for eye wash, it does actually expire, and that's something you need to think about. Garbage bags, spare garbage bags, wet wipes. These are all things people don't really think about needing, but if you ever need to throw things away that maybe are a biohazard issue or, clean up extra trash around your residence, never know, you can always use extra garbage bags. I know right now, dust masks or, medical masks are a big thing, but these are something that you can keep inside of the emergency medical kit or your emergency preparedness kit. Ziploc baggies are always good to kind of separate things and keep things clean, okay? Another thing on this list that is checked off, wrench or pliers to turn off utilities, okay? Most adults should know where the water shut off, where the gas shut off, or any of that kind of stuff is in their residence, okay? This is not normally kept inside of my kit. It's still in the wrapper, it's still in the packaging. I don't keep it inside of the kit because if I need to use it, I want to be able to use it as quickly as possible. So I set this right next to where the water shut off is in the utility room in my house. This is something that can save a lot of money if you're able to shut that water off, if you have some kind of leak or something going on in a residence. This is probably kind of a more high dollar item, but it will save quite a bit of money, okay? Next, we'll talk about having matches, emergency candles. If you don't have enough money for stuff like flashlights, this is a 120-hour candle. Again, if you have children in the home, you need to make sure these kind of items are set in an area where they're not going to knock them over. But these kind of candles like this, if you don't have power, you don't have a generator, you don't have flashlight batteries or anything like that, these are fairly, simple items you can get that can still light your home in the event of a power outage or extended power outage. And again, if you just keep the matches or anything like that right in the same baggie, you'll never be without the light source or the matches. Other thing that's on here is paper and pencil. I don't know why, but I kind of keep that within my first aid kit, or the baggie. So I've got a little Write in the Rain paper notebook here and a couple extra pencils, okay? Another thing on here, it talks about sleeping bags and all that kind of stuff. So we were lucky enough to get I still have it in the wrapper. It's a large wool blanket that came with our kit, all right? Something you want to have living in Michigan. We live in a winter climate. A wool blanket is going to be best, but I've also got small travel blankets and other things in the kit, just kind of miscellaneous things that you come across. They say, hey, that'd be good to have in the emergency kit rather than just throwing it in the cupboard and or your linen closet and never seeing it again, okay? So everything you can use is useful. Light sticks, they're good for if you're out of power. You can mark off where the hallways are at. You can break them open using the signal emergency workers if they can't see you. Always a good thing to have. fairly cheap item to add to the kit. Paper towels, all right, those are always great to have in any kind of emergency situation or your emergency kit. Kind of goes along with having sanitary wipes and anything like that else in your kit. But you buy a big, large package of these and take two of them, one or two of them, throw them in your emergency kit. Never know when you're gonna be able to use them for, okay? Other things that I've just kind of come across, these are kind of like the camping emergency blankets. I don't know if you can see that well. Just a survival blanket, all right? Those are fairly cheap when you come across them. Pretty easy item to add to the kits, okay? Other thing that people don't normally think about to add to an emergency kit, Am I Ready has these family preparedness guides, and I'll kind of go over those here in a little bit to show everybody on the website, but this is a paper copy that the state provided for all of us, but you can actually print these off, add them to your kit. If you get a folder or anything like that, you can print off CPR instructions, first aid instructions, preparedness guides, any kind of things like that. Put them in a folder, throw them in your emergency kit. You'll always have the knowledge you need right there with the kit when you have it. Other items I usually keep within my kit are the manuals for any of the kind of emergency items that I have. So I've got a power pack that I have that I leave in my basement. I've also got a generator for my house. Make sure if you have any items that you don't regularly use in your emergency kit, that you have the instruction manuals or any kind of thing that's going to tell you how to use it, where to use it, and why to use it, okay? And that is currently all we have currently in my emergency preparedness kit. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the slideshow here.
While you're going back, I just wanted to let everyone know the questions that you're posing in the Q&A section will be asked at the end of his presentation. And I'm sure that he'll be providing some of those items and links for you as well.
So moving into these links here, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the Am I Ready website. Again, it's www.michigan.gov/amiready. Let's see if it'll work here. There we go. So this is the Michigan.gov website through the Michigan State Police and Am I Ready? And you can see their statement here about being prepared. All right. They've got a couple different tabs up here. So this Be Informed tab, it goes over pretty much anything and everything that you can think of, okay? Active shooter, emergency alerts, fires, nuclear power, blackouts, extreme cold, flooding. I mean, everything you could even think of to want to talk to a family about, it is on this website, all right? If you go to the Plan Ahead section here, you'll see a couple different topics. And if you notice right here, second topic down is your emergency kit checklist, okay? So there's your auto preparedness kit poster. And really all that is if you have an office or something like that and you want to put a poster up, you can go ahead and print that resource off. It talks about items you can have inside of your vehicle: flashlight, extra batteries, phone charger, basic tool kit, radio, water, blankets are definitely a good thing to have in the winter. If I could pick two things off of here, or two or three things off of here, that would be most important, especially for Michigan drivers: a first aid kit, blanket or sleeping bag, and keeping gas in your vehicle. If you do get stuck somewhere and you have a vehicle that's running, you can still turn the heat on in the winter. That's going to be very important, okay? And then moving forward, there's your emergency preparedness checklist. And there's also a pet emergency preparedness checklist on there, okay? So this is something that you can just click on, print right from your office, and either you can choose to laminate it or not, but this is a very good resource that you can just print out and actually provide to families so they have something that, you know, is a base for their emergency preparedness.
Trooper Evans, your screen didn't open for those web pages.
You said it didn't open?
It did not, no.
Okay, the Am I Ready website, is that currently open?
No. We just have the list of resources with the links.
Let's see here.
There we go.
You have that up now?
There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, are you able to see that now? All right, perfect. Okay, so again, sorry about that. This is the Am I Ready website. And again, this is the Be Informed tab that I spoke of earlier. That has pretty much anything and everything you could want to think about to talk to families about as far as being informed about emergency preparedness. This is the Plan Ahead tab that I talked about. And when you go on that, hopefully everybody can see that. You can see the couple different headlines there, but this is the emergency kit checklist area on that website. So again, if you go to Am I Ready, Plan Ahead, scroll right down, you'll be able to see this auto preparedness kit poster. And are y'all able to see that? And again, this is something you can post up in your office or near your desk, anywhere where people are going to be able to view that. There's your auto emergency kit checklist. Again, printable, and you can have that available for anybody that would like it. Your emergency preparedness checklist. And again, this kind of goes over the basic kit, clothing and bedding that you can have, and some additional items that maybe aren't as important, but really these are the recommended supplies right here. If anything that you're going to have, you want to have what's in this basic kit. And again, here is the pet emergency preparedness checklist. All right. Another resource here, the family preparedness section under the Plan Ahead section on the Am I Ready website. You have a family emergency plan, and that family emergency or family preparedness guide that I showed you is right here in a printable form. Okay. If you look at the table of contents, it talks about those 4 steps to preparedness that I spoke of in the plan. Recovering from an emergency, talks about Michigan hazards, and a lot more. This family emergency plan is a nice resource to just go ahead and print out and give the families to kind of get them started. Talks about an evacuation location, out-of-town contacts, a neighborhood meeting place. Has information where you can have family member contact information, names, date of birth, important information, medical information. This is something that if they want to print it out and get it filled out, they can leave within the emergency medical kit. It's something that you can put in a fire safe box or have in a location where you have that information readily available for other family members, emergency medical workers, or anybody else who may need it. There's workplace and school information, medical contacts, insurance information, public emergency services and contractors. So if you've got a local fire department, a local electrician or plumber that you need to call, have on hand. It's got hospital information, public health department information. Pretty much anything you can think of that you may want to have on hand is right here. And here are a few cutouts for the family emergency plan that you can leave with your children, have on hand for really anybody who may need it. Family communication plan for kids, your home, parent number, cell, work, Sibling information, out-of-state friends or relatives. Neighbor information is always good to have if your children may be home or by themselves for some portion of the day. All right. And again, this talks about getting a kit for pets in the emergencies and other resources. There's also a community preparedness section on this website. If we go to take action here, this talks about ways you can get involved in the community during disasters. What you can do until help arrives is a good website, or sorry, a good portion of this website. Talks about FEMA preparation and other ways to be prepared with the community. As far as families with younger children, there's a youth section here. There are printouts, there are flyers, there are coloring books on this website. They've got a prep and quote unquote prep and Perry. They're your emergency preparation buddies. They've got activity books that you can go through with some of the kids that are maybe, elementary school age within the families. And again, these are all resources you can print out. I believe most state police posts that have a community services trooper can also provide some of these in color and paper form as well. But these are just kind of coloring books that kind of get the children involved with emergency preparedness. And there are also youth resources on, again, preparedness, cyberbullying, and so on and so forth. There's also a ready.gov website. That I will share here. You guys able to see that? Just give me a thumbs up, Cara or Lisa, if you can see that. All right, perfect. This is the ready.gov website. This is kind of the federal version of the Am I Ready website. All right. Again, it's got be informed, plan ahead, take action, and kids sections. All right. It's pretty easy to use and explore. Okay. They got a kids section where they can play games, learn about disasters and get tips, all that kind of stuff. Things for teens. Specifically, this audience will be interested in the families portion. All right. And maybe some of you will be interested in the educators and organizations website. They've got their own version of a prepared with Pedro thing here. Again, for kids, games, and many more different resource collections here. Coping, disaster facts, and so on. And then, as always, the resource for really anything you need to know within the state of Michigan is the Michigan State Police website. They've got information for COVID-19 and other kind of general topics. All right. And MSP also has a mobile app available for Apple and Android. And at this point in time, if there are any questions within the chat, I'll go ahead and let Cara or Lisa take back over.
Okay, I have a couple. I have two that I'll do, and then Cara can, which one she has. One of the questions is it safe to leave a gas can in your car during the winter?
So as far as leaving gas cans in the car during the winter, I would say as long as it's in the proper container that it's supposed to be in, one of the red gas cans, whether it's the plastic container or the metal container, I would say as long as it is either locked in a position to where it's not going to be bumping around in the trunk or anything like that, it should be safe. When you're filling those up, make sure you're taking it out of the bed of your truck or out of the trunk or wherever you have it. Set it on the ground next to the gas tank and pump it that way. Don't leave it in your vehicle while you're adding it in there. But that is safe, much more safe in pickups or anything like that. But if you need to leave it in your trunk, make sure it's, not an excessive amount, and make sure it's in the proper container, and make sure it is locked down properly.
Okay. One more that I have is, how safe is having liquid medicine in your emergency kit?
Well, as far as having it, I mean, if it's a medicine that is needed, you need to have it, no matter what. It needs to stay in the container that was made to hold that medicine, and it needs to be stored properly. So you need to be making sure you're following the temperature restrictions on the bottle. And again, talk with your doctor about making sure the space that you're keeping that liquid medicine is safe. But it's definitely safe to keep it inside of that, as long as it's temperature controlled properly to the specs of the medicine.
And for the next couple of questions, it's asking, can you get these kits in other languages? I think that's a pretty good question.
I believe on the Am I Ready website, they have some of the checklists in a few other languages. Don't quote me on that. But if you do need it in a resource that is a different language, anybody can get with me, or you can get with one of the community services troopers, and we can kind of forward that to emergency management, and being able to cater to other languages as far as that. That'd be a great idea. So if it's not something that is already available, is specifically with Am I Ready, I will definitely bring that up to the people that are in charge of that. I think that's a great idea.
Another question asked, and there are just a few that you even may want to follow up with here, but can you please repeat the 3 things for vehicle safety?
Well, I didn't go over too much about the vehicle safety stuff, but on the Am I Ready website. Oh, you're talking about the 3 most important things, in my opinion, as far as winter Michigan vehicle safety. Is that what that question was about?
I'll see if the Jessica can send us a message in chat real quick.
I think that may have been what she referred to. And again, I think what I spoke of on there, if I can remember correctly, was definitely having some kind of blanket or cold weather attire in the vehicle. Having gas in that vehicle. Try not to let your gas tank go below half a tank, especially in the winter, especially in inclement weather. Just because if you need to leave that vehicle running and you've been running around with a quarter tank of gas, your vehicle shuts off, you lose a heat source. It's going to be much worse than being able to have that vehicle running. And I'm trying to think of the other thing that I spoke of. I was looking at the sheet. It was the blanket, having the gas, and honestly, I don't remember what the other thing was. But if there's another question about that, I can kind of look at that real quick and see.
All right, Eric. I don't know if Lisa wanted to take back over, but there are a few more. And if you need
let me just do one more. We were just wondering, a question came in, is can providers get one of these kits, or is this something they have to put together themselves?
I believe it's going to have to be something they put together themselves. I know when they rolled out this emergency preparedness kit, they did provide many different state employees with the kit in order to kind of get a jump start on our emergency preparedness. I think part of that was as state troopers, a lot of the times we are leaving our families to go out into these kind of emergencies, and they wanted us to have an availability of some kind of a kit to leave with our families to have them prepared. But again, the emergency preparedness kit checklist is a great tool to go off of to kind of start building your own kit. I know these containers that we keep our kits in are available at Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot, really any major box store like Meijer. They're not too expensive. And this kit isn't something that you need to go buy the container, buy everything in the kit in one stop. It's something that this month, I'm going to get the container. I'm going to take a couple rolls of the paper towel and maybe toilet paper that I already bought, throw them in the kit. I'm going to go find that old Afghan or that old extra blanket that's just been in the back corner of the closet and throw it in there. Here or there, it's something that you can really start putting together. And I know a lot of the people that are in this presentation right now, probably work with families. And this is something I kind of talked about, where if you can get a grant or you can get some kind of funds to assist these maybe lower income families or any family that you're working with, you know, buying the container, buying the weather radio, or getting first aid supplies donated. It's always something you can do to kind of jumpstart that mental thought in their head to really be considering how they can be prepared.
Go ahead, Cara.
I see that the third item that may have been remembered was first aid.
Oh, yes.
A couple of people have stated in there in the chat. The last one, I believe most want to know how to go about getting a copy of the checklist. That's the last question that I see. If there are any new ones or others have come in, please make sure you place them here or in the chat. We'll check both.
Yep. So as far as getting a copy of the checklist, you can go right back to the michigan.gov/Am I Ready website. And then if you click on the plan tab and scroll down, there's a multiple checklists there that you can just go ahead and print right off. And like I said, if you're able to laminate it, that would be that much better. But there are many, many different checklists, many resources, many guides. And if you don't remember anything from this presentation, remember www.michigan.gov/Am I Ready, and all the information is right there. It's a great resource.
Wonderful. We had a lot of great questions.
Yes.
Now it makes me want to go out and start my own kit, Trooper, because I don't have one.
That's the goal. That's the goal. It's something. I mean, living in Michigan, we encounter all sorts of weather threats, and I mean, who knows what, and being prepared again is something very important. It's something that will save you a lot of time, comfort, mental, safety. As far as, I mean, imagine not being prepared, the amount of worry that you have not being prepared. If you encounter any kind of emergency and you're prepared, it's that much just more comforting knowing that, hey, I can make it through. I've got the stuff I need to get by for myself and my family, so.
What about the compact food that there are some vendors out there that sell? Are we able to keep those in there?
Yeah, so just as an example, on my own, I mean, at my house, I've got a shelf in my utility room in the basement, and I go to Sam's Club. And you don't have to just leave it down there. A lot of what people do is you take the oldest item that may be expiring soon, you move it to the front, you put the newest stuff you buy in the back. So I have stuff like I enjoy tuna every once in a while, so I keep like the Star-Kissed tuna packets, my chicken, and a lot of the times like they have like canned chicken, canned green beans, and in an emergency, if you're not able to get food, one of the biggest things I've learned is make sure you have food that your kids like. Okay, because it's going to be a lot easier having those comforts and having things that you do like on hand in those kind of emergencies that will also kind of help you push through a little bit as well. But yeah, I mean, any kind of food that's shelf stable is definitely a good pair to your emergency preparedness kit. The kit doesn't really talk about having food, it talks about water, but in conjunction with that kit, you definitely want to have food items and water for 72 hours for everyone in the family if you can.
Perishable.
Okay,
again,
yeah,
it's not
two more
something you have to go out.
questions.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, two more questions come in, Trooper. One of them I'll go over is, how often do you replace the materials in your kit?
And that all depends on the expiration date. Generally, I check the kit in the fall. So right before we move into winter months where we get ice storms and power outages and stuff like that, that's always a good time to check it. And the second time I check it is in the spring, but right before we start getting the thunderstorms, which again come with power outages and things like that. So again, it's all based on the expiration date. But if you're checking it once or twice a year, you're definitely going to catch that expiration date, and you can go ahead and swap those items out when you need to. Yeah, so that's a good rule of thumb.
One last question. Are you stating it, or you want me to read it? Or
yeah, go ahead.
What safety recommendations can you share with individuals who do not own a vehicle but navigate on buses or walk?
Okay, that's a good question. So as far as navigating on buses or walking during really any kind of emergency, you need to take into account whether your method of getting where you need to go is going to be available or not. So I know a lot of the times during weather emergencies, the buses may not be running, and you may not want to go out in that kind of emergency. But if you absolutely have to, um, if you're going to be walking in that kind of weather emergency, you need to make sure you have the proper clothing, proper attire, the proper footwear to make it through whatever kind of weather emergency you're going to have. It's tough not having a vehicle, and it's tough when the buses go down. It's tough when walking is not an option. But if it's that important and you do need to go out, you need to make sure you're taking the proper precautions, okay? Because you don't want to end up in a worse position than you already are and having to have somebody else come help you out. Okay, so the biggest thing on that is just making sure, if the buses or walking is not available and it's not, a life-threatening situation, just to, stay right where you are if it's safe, or call for help if you need to.
Okay. We have one more trooper, and I'm sure you're going to have a great answer for this one.
Sure.
She says, I'm a new mom. Is there anything I can do to ensure my baby stays safe in the event of an emergency?
Yes, definitely. And again, it's kind of tailored to the type of emergency that there is. But one of the things that's going to help you out the most is making sure the baby is comfortable. So if you're not comfortable, most likely the baby's not comfortable either. Okay, so just as an example, winter's going to be coming up soon. So if you are in a position where the power goes out at your residence, if you're cold, imagine your child is probably more cold than you are. They've got a smaller stature, smaller body. They're not producing as much heat as you are. So you need to make sure you have the proper blankets, proper attire on your child. Make sure you have extra diapers, extra wipes, extra formula, extra really anything that's age appropriate for your child to be as comfortable as possible, no matter what the emergency is. All right, and that may entail spending a little extra money here or there, or putting a little more aside for items that are going to keep your infant or your child comfortable in an emergency situation. But your child's health and welfare and mental status is huge, and if you are prepared in an emergency, they're going to be just fine.
Okay. I think that'll just about do it. Cara, what do you think?
I believe so. It's been a great hour almost here that we've come together, and all the great attention and good questions, as you mentioned, were
Yeah.
asked. We want to remind
Trooper
everyone.
Ronnie, thank you so much for your time.
That's right.
Yeah, that's no
Your
problem at all. If
information.
anybody has other questions, you can always reach out to your local state police post. And again, always refer back to that MI Ready website if you have any other questions about emergency preparedness. And if you get any other questions that kind of trickle in after, feel free to email me and I can shoot some emails back and answer those questions as well.
All right.
I'm
Thank
sure
you,
that
everyone.
some want to see the presentation. I think it's going to be available for them as well. If it is one of the items that was to be shared, and to remember to make sure you all fill out the evaluation. And you all have
Stay
a great
safe,
afternoon.
everyone.
I hope to see you after lunch.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.